Welcome back to Purrfect Takes. I'm your host, Stephen Patton, joined as always by my co host and dear friend, Jake McQuire. And today, we have to talk about exactly what we wanted to talk about last week. And that is a victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, an early Christmas present. Believe it or not, the last time we played the Buccaneers right before Christmas, we took it to them at home. It was back in 2011. Cam Newton kind of had this coming out performance. He had, I think, four total touchdowns. We ran for a total of 270 yards on the day, just complete and utter dominance. It wasn't the case this past Sunday, but we pulled off a victory. The Grim Reaper, the Carolina Reaper, collected another game-winning drive to his collection. I think he joins Josh Allen and Peyton Manning as having the most game-winning drives at his age. So pretty cool accolades on that front. What were the big takeaways on Sunday that led to the 23-20 victory over Tampa Bay?
Well, Bryce Young joined Josh Allen and Peyton Manning the last time he had a game-winning touchdown, which would have been the Rams game, I imagine. So now he has the most at his age, 12, which is that's impressive. But it's also hopefully we can win games without needing game-winning touchdown drives. That would be nice. But for now, it was just a phenomenal game from Young. I think he was pretty clearly the best player on the field on both sides of the all three sides, if you include special teams. Just
PFF
not
agrees with you, so you got that for you.
so yeah, rare PFF Perfect Takes alliance here. But I thought he was phenomenal. There weren't a lot of plays that he missed. He was making decisions pretty quickly, extending plays with his legs, taking designed runs. You brought up Cam Newton in his rookie season just a minute ago. He looked like Cam Newton a little bit on that zone read where he ran for 9 yards, almost got the first. I can't believe that we had the audacity to call something like that, but it worked. It was a not a chain mover, but about 9.5 yards on that play, just out of nowhere. And then Dave Canales in his presser said, Bryce is just showing that he can do that kind of thing, which I agree with. I like that he got out of bounds. I don't want to see him be like Cam, where he's like slamming into linebackers. That wouldn't be ideal, but it worked out. Extending plays, he found Mitchell Evans on a really cool dump off right before he went out of bounds. He found JT Sanders for the what would that be? The go ahead touchdown at that point on a crazy extend kind of play, very Cam Newton esque on that play. And I thought Bryce Young overall played very, very well. The receivers, outside of one particular receiver, played pretty well. The defense had their moments. Like we gave up 20 points, which is about what you want to give up against a division opponent that's as good as Tampa Bay. They had a couple sacks, forced a game winning, game stealing turnover there at the end. I thought that really all three phases played pretty well. What I will say is we continue to struggle covering kickoffs and occasionally punts. That's something that I would like to see cleaned up. But I thought it was as close to a complete game as you could have asked for, given how potent Tampa can be on offense, and it led to the win.
Well, you felt that potency very early on. They go down, score a touchdown on their opening drive. They go up 7-3. And then it happened twice in this game. And it's one thing that when you play the Seahawks, obviously this coming week, you play the Buccaneers in 2 more weeks, and you're hopefully entering the playoff picture. You're going to host a playoff game. Like this is what's on the horizon. You can't make some of these. I don't want to say careless mistakes, but taking a sack on first down and it being like a 9 yard loss, it created a lot of these third and long situations early on in the game. And you just don't want to see that. So Bucks are driving. It looks like they're going to go up 14-3. Sean Tucker is coming around. He's got Baker Mayfield as a lead blocker. JC Horn makes an incredible tackle. And I think that is really the pivot point, because the next drive, the Bucks had a third and long. We had Roseboom come in and sack Baker Mayfield, one of the two sacks on the day. And you could start to see that the defense started picking it up. Like they got hit in the mouth a little bit, but they found their rhythm. And that really, I think, allowed the Panthers to find their groove on offense, which led to the touchdown right before half. That connection between Bryce Young and T Mac is starting to become something to watch. And it was very cool to see him get by Jamel Dean and make a special play. T Mac made another phenomenal grab that really should have had, I think, a DPI called, but you catch the ball anyway. It doesn't matter. Moves the chains. What other things on offense do you think it could be improved, worked upon. I could talk about Tommy Tremble and his blocking. I think he was an unsung hero for the day. What was there anything else that caught you on that side of the ball? Maybe before we talk about the defense and what we'd like to see improve.
Yeah, Jalen Coker is becoming one of the better go ball runners in the league at this point. I think he's a really good receiver too to complement T Mac. On the other side, like Bryce Young's becoming one of the best go ball throwers. Like that's a pretty perfect connection between those two right now. Things we can clean up. A lot of mental, not a lot, a couple mental mistakes from Xavier Leggett. Another like out of bounds step gaff kind of thing, and then he dropped what I'm not sure if it would have gone for a touchdown, but he's a big, fast player, and he had a lot of green grass in front of him. Would have been at least 15 to 20 yards. He dropped an easy one there, and then the run game. I think we had timely chunk runs. We had like two. Obviously, we had a Jimmy Horn end around and stuff, but outside of the two or three significant runs, we were getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage. And you and I talked about this, right? Vita Vea, you just can't really run at him. And so when you try to run away from him, the rest of their defensive line are larger players as well. And this is something that we thought we would have concerns with, and those concerns were proven to be right. I like how we didn't go away from the run. We still had, I believe, we had 15 total carries between Chuba and Rico. And obviously, you'd like to see that number be 20 or 25 in a game script where you're up, but we weren't up the whole time. We had to pass the ball quite a bit. And so I understand that they weren't. The feature, the focus of the offense, especially when you're getting stuffed. I think that's an area of growth from Dave Canales. Like when you look at the what was the San Francisco game, right? Where we had six, like you can count them on both your hands, six total designed run calls for our running backs. And that's an area of growth. Uh, Other than that, like I'm pretty fine with the offensive performance. The O line was quite bad throughout the game. They were giving up pretty consistent pressure, but Ike Aquanu was out, so that's understandable. The only other thing I would say is Austin Corbett, the right guard, stepped on Bryce Young's bad ankle again to the point where apparently Andy Dalton was warming up on the sideline early in the game. They have to fix that somehow. Like some of it's got to be on Bryce. Like maybe he needs to get out of the from under center quicker. But it seems like it's always Austin Corbett that steps on him. So maybe Corbett can rework his landmarks as well. Otherwise, I thought the offense played pretty well, and they put us in a position to where we're back in the lead with the division now. It's a full game lead. It's not a half game like it was a couple weeks ago, and when we are in a position to where we can take care of business over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be in control of your own destiny. I think the only thing I would add to the mix, we sung T Mac and Coker's praises. I Horn had a special play. He's definitely more of a gadget type wide receiver at the moment, but I want to start seeing more snaps of him or just 12 personnel than seeing Xavier Leggett on the field. And I understand he adds a little bit more of a dimension as a blocker, but as a wide receiver, just the spatial awareness, his hands, it just always seems just questionable. The sideline catch, like for instance, it's like if you attack the football with your hands and you make a catch, you're in a position to toe drag. And it was just the way he was leaning, trying to bring it in with his body. You're just seeing all these errors and mistakes that we knew from his rookie year. And like this is what happens when you draft a player so old. Like these are just habits at this point. And I don't think they're going to be able to be broken. I think it was Xavier Leggett, Keon Coleman. They're the wide receivers that we thought they were coming out of college. Like I said, the saving grace is hitting on Coker as undrafted free agent because I think him and T Mac, that's what you can build around moving forward. And I'm excited to see that. And on the defensive side, um, it's it's a mixture. It's when we were able to turn things up, it looks a lot better than I think it typically does. But on a play-by-play basis, this is a team that gives up a lot of yards. And I'd like to see it be more opportunistic. I thought I saw Evero kind of go into his bag a little bit, find some creative blitzes to speed up Baker a little bit. And I'd like to see that against Sam Darnold next week and then Baker Mayfield again the following week. And it's just give yourself an opportunity to create a turnover, to force a mistake by the quarterback to get you off the field and put you in a more favorable situation. And I think the more you can do that and just lean into this group, like you're seeing Lathan Ransom come into his own. Mike Jackson leads the NFL in pass breakups. If you throw it towards Horn, this guy is coming down with interceptions typically. That always isn't the case, but the New Orleans Saints aren't in our near future, so I'm not necessarily worried about him from a coverage standpoint to where it's like those guys can go make plays. And I think you need to allow those guys to make plays despite some of the explosiveness you may allow on the opposing.
You and I talk about it seemingly every week that when you don't have the consistent rush with just four players, I know on paper we're a 3-4, but we're often on an even front. When you don't have that consistent rush, you have to be able to take chances and stuff. And I think that's what Giro Avero, the defensive coordinator, did in this game for a couple instances. The blitzes, I thought, for the large part, worked. Now, Baker had two big runs where he escaped some blitzes, and I put that more on the back end. Obviously, you're covering, but you also got to get your head around at some point and go make a tackle or stop him. But I think that the blitzes, for the large part, were successful. And it was cool to see, like, kind of like trying to mix it up because if we just sit back and play, they have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin, they have Emeka Buka. They're gonna beat us in the pass game if we just sit back and let it happen. So they were beating us on that final drive up until Baker and Mike Evans weren't on the same page. Baker threw the interception to seal the game. So I like the changes, the wrinkles that Coach Evero is throwing in. You're gonna have to do that even more against Sam Darnold because yes, he was a former Panther. Yes, he saw ghosts like 5 or 6 years ago, but he's been playing much better than Baker Mayfield over the last 2 months. I would say Baker started the season really well, but you got to lock on to Darnold. You really got to blanket Jackson Smith and Jigba. They don't have the depth at receiver that the Buccaneers had, but if you can kind of, I don't know, bracket him, put Horn exclusively on him, I think that's one way you can lean. But like you said, the defense hit or miss, but when you needed it to hit, I thought they hit. Like the individual efforts, right? Mike Jack breaking up the other Mike Evans touchdown attempt, JC Horn stopping Sean Tucker for a touchdown, Derek Brown getting a sack on third down, the pressure from Cam Jackson, our who was a fourth or fifth round pick in the draft. He's the guy that pushed the lineman into Baker's face that caused Baker to step up and throw the interception. And then, of course, Lathan Ransom being opportunistic, redeeming himself for last week. And I think that's, yeah. Oh, Nick Scorton as well was a menace in the run game and in the short pass and screen game. So a lot of individual efforts, and you would like to see it be more team oriented, but I can't complain because we got the win. I think there's more to clean up on that side of the ball than there is on offense for sure.
And going against the Seattle Seahawks, this is a team that lives off explosives. And I know that leans itself into what Evero wants to be able to take away. And then you look at how the Seahawks have struggled to run the ball this year. It does seem like as long as you can make Darnold's life just a little bit more difficult, he's the guy that has the ability to make, I think, any throw on the football field. It's about just muddying what he's seeing and kind of creating opportunities for yourself, just like we had against Baker Mayfield. Anything that we want to touch on with the Buccaneers? They obviously play the Miami Dolphins this coming week. They're in a weird predicament where they won a slew of games with Tua. Then Mike McDaniels wasn't happy with his performance against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And then you have Quinn Ewers start against the Bengals, and that goes awry. Like I don't know if this is a team to beat the reeling Buccaneers, who I think are 2-7 over their last 9 games. I think the Panthers just went to 7-2, so complete reciprocals of each other. I just don't see this week necessarily being a game that the Buccaneers fumble unless they are just completely spiraling as a team, a roster, coaching staff, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, this is the get right game for the Buccaneers. I think, unless they want to put Tua back in the Dolphins, that is, unless they want to give Zach Wilson, their backup, a try. I just don't see Quinn Ewers being able to beat the Buccaneers. He threw, I believe it was 3 interceptions against the Bengals defense. The Bengals defense is closer to last year's Panthers defense than the 31st best defense in the league. And when that's the case, it's going to be tough. This game's also in Miami, so it's not going to be cold. So if there's any reservations about cold weather, there shouldn't be any. Like It, I'm not begging. I'm asking politely, maybe for Christmas, that the Dolphins put Tua back in. But I saw a report today from NFL's Tom Pelissero that Tua has played his last down as a Dolphin, unless that they're both of the QBs ahead of him get hurt. Right, then they're just going to have to put him in. But it seems like that's the direction they're leaning. They want to give seventh round rookie Quinn Ewers a shot. You might as well. You're not playing for anything, but it would be really cool if viewers and the Dolphins are able to get the win here. What I will say is, even though they threw a lot of they had a lot of turnovers, they found some stuff by mixing Malik Washington in there. Devon A Chain is always going to be dangerous as well. So I don't think that they're going to get shut out completely. But like you said, unless Tampa Bay, just as an organization, has lost all faith in this year's iteration of the team, and when you listen to how Todd Bowles speaks in pressers, it kind of leans that way. They're just way too talented to lose to the Dolphins this week. So you can't really put your eggs in the basket of, oh, let's hope Tampa Bay loses. We have to be on our own P's and Q's, so to speak, and we have to make sure we're getting wins the next 2 weeks. And it starts with Seattle this week.
It does. And as much as we as fans can talk about, hey, what does it look like for Tampa Bay in this matchup with Miami? That's not something you can think about if you're on the Carolina Panthers, if you're Dave Canales. So like what happens with that game has no bearing on what you're doing this Sunday. Like you said, the goal and the objective should be to continue the dominant streak that we have at home. We are 5-2 at home. This is our last home game at the bank. You're hoping to host a playoff game here in a few weeks, like make that count. And so I want nothing more than to see that. I think when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, the biggest thing I have is what we talked about on offense. If you're able to contain Jackson Smith and Jigba, if you're able to kind of unnerve Sam Darnold, speed him up a little bit, confuse what he's seeing, which I think that's something that Evero can do. It's the defense that worries me. I mean, this is a phenomenal defensive line. They have playmakers on the back end, and they are one of the most well coached units in football. I'm not saying Dave Canales in this offense is in over their head, but this seems like a task that might be a little too tall for this current iteration of the Panthers. I I don't know what exactly the game plan should be. I don't know if this is you just lean into the run game, you get into third and fourth short situations, and then let Bryce Young go to work and then just live with what comes from that. Or if you just kind of play your brand of football. You take the lumps when you can get them and go with that. But I'm curious your thoughts on the direction for this Panthers offense and where we can win on Sunday.
This is a tough matchup. I If I had to rank all of the defenses we're going to play against or we have played against this year, Seattle will be number one for me. They're a top three defense in the league to me. I think Seattle and Denver are probably 2 and 3, and then Houston right now it's just on another level. So from that perspective, it's just going to be tough. Even if we had Tom Brady behind center, it's going to be tough because they're a good defense. I think on offense and what Canales has to plan is ball control. Like we need to squeeze the clock away from Seattle, kind of like what we did in the middle of the season in some of our wins, like Green Bay, Atlanta, some of those games. It's what the Saints did to us 2 weeks ago. I think you have to lean on the run game, but Seattle's very stout on the defensive line. And so when you have pass opportunities, Bryce Young has to be on the money. He has to be accurate because they have some opportunistic defensive backs that like to take the ball away. So what I see in this matchup is they have guys like Devin Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant, guys who are very physical. But Devin Witherspoon's not the tallest guy, not the longest corner in the world. And it reminds me of what we faced this past week with the Buccaneers, who have shorter corners, and then against the Rams, who also have shorter, smaller corners. The bigger receivers, T Mac, Coker, and even Leggett, when his number is called, they have to take advantage of their size in the one on one passing game. I think that's where you can move the chains with like possession types of throws. I think that's going to be in the game plan, a lot of short and intermediate kind of things. And then we have to throw in the go ball every now and then because that's something that Bryce Young, Coker, T Mac have really grown with over the past couple of weeks. But it's going to start with controlling the clock, in my opinion. If you limit both teams to 5 or 6 possessions, I think that favors the Panthers a lot more than trading 3 and outs because eventually Seattle's going to break one to JSN or break a long run. So I think like ball control, time control, that's the game that we got to play this week.
Being methodical makes a lot of sense, but knowing that the Seahawks are going to be an opportunistic defense and just wait for that opportunity that they can make a play, it gets a little bit dangerous. That's why I think the Seahawks they love kind of their boomer bust approach. If it's working on offense, they're moving the ball. If not, it's you're punting the ball and pretty much putting the game back in the defense's hands. And I think, like you said, leaning into the run game, playing ball control, limiting possessions, similar like what we did with the Packers. Not so much against the Rams. I know there were like limited possessions, but that was like high scoring. It was like tit for
Yeah.
tat. Like if we had a scenario like that at that point, it's like I I'm not worried about the Seahawks defense because Bryce Young's on one because he's able to be in a shootout like that. But
Well,
like that's
it's
that's a
like
tall task.
look at how the Colts played Seattle 2 weeks ago, and I think that was Philip Rivers' first game back. Obviously, they lose that game, and the Colts, I think, had 6 scoring possessions, all field goals. But them limiting the Seattle to, I think, 6 possessions, and just I don't know, playing the explosive game because it was really they had one explosive drive at the end that won them the game. Seattle did. I think that's kind of the approach you have to take. If there's only 6 possessions, 5 possessions, 7 possessions per team, that's I I favor the Panthers more in that regard than if there were 10 or 11 like you're saying because
Yeah.
eventually uh, our defense can't hold them for that long. We've had one shutout all year. I think the lowest point total outside of that is probably 20 points to the San Francisco no, it'd be 17 to the Saints would be our other lowest total. But you have to just shorten the game. I don't like I can't stress enough that they have better player like their offensive weapons as a whole, I'm not sure are better than ours. But their top end player, JSN, is better. He's going to have his plays, his game. Their run game isn't as good as ours, I don't think. But when Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet breaks one, that's better than when Chuba breaks one. Rico's had his runs, you know. They're going to have their chances. And so we have to limit the ability for them to have those chances. I think that's how you play on offense. The same thing with the defense. You got to mix in more of the stuff that you did this week against Tampa Bay. I know Baker's really bad because he's shorter, kind of like Bryce. Bryce actually sees the field better, I think, than Baker. Baker's really bad when he has interior
That's
pressure
interesting. I
because he
agree from a pressure standpoint.
Baker
Bryce Young like moves
as
around a
a
little bit better.
passer, I
Yeah.
think he's better. Baker also escapes a lot better. I'll say that. Baker's a very good escape, third down scrambling kind of guy. But Darnold doesn't have the same issues, I think, as Baker in terms of seeing and realizing the pressure at this point in his career. He obviously did in New York and in Carolina. But I think mixing some stuff up, throwing in some corner blitzes, some safety blitzes like Evera has been doing, I think that's the key. We also need to get Trevin Wallace back because as good as Roseboom is at getting pressure on blitzes, he's not the greatest in coverage. Neither is Wallace, but he's the best thing we've got. So I'd like to see Trevin Wallace back on the field this week if possible.
It would be a sight for sore eyes because going into the season, we knew that was a position of weakness. And we know that's something that this team is probably going to address again this offseason. You need everybody out there because I feel like this is an offense, especially with Clint Kubiak, that is familiar with the Panthers. This was the
Yeah.
Saints offensive coordinator. And if you guys remember, he lit us up week one last year in New Orleans. And obviously, like, we don't have to play the Saints. We don't have to play that demon. We got swept by them already.
Well, it's
But
funny. They have Rashid Shaheed, who, if you remember, on like the fifth play, just torched JC Horn, just ran past him for the opening drive touchdown. So we do have to worry about Shaheed.
and he did have a punt return, and that explosiveness is something you're going to have to worry about. But I think the second time we played the Saints last year, we limited some of those, and that's the hope and goal is that you are able to kind of execute this game plan where you're able to play ball control. And for all you nerds who are listening, there's a pretty much a advanced analytic stat called like pass rate over expectation, and it's literally negatively correlated with like pace of game. So teams that like play ball control typically aren't going to pass the ball because you want a running clock. So that means you're going to probably hand the ball off more than you're going to pass the ball. And so seeing that from the Panthers, I know the Seahawks also do that as well because some of that sets up those explosive plays we see on play action. It will be very interesting to see if this is a long game. I think this is going to be a shorter game from that standpoint, unless both defenses are forcing a ton of 3-and-outs or the Seahawks are just able to move up and down the field at will.
Yeah, if you recall the Rams game, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago now? I believe that was the shortest game over the last 10 years in which both teams scored 30. I think that was the or no,
Yeah.
with more
Because
than
like the shortest
55
game,
total yards or 55 total points, excuse me. It was the shortest game in the last 10 or 15 years. The
yeah,
game
with
was
that many
over at
points,
like
yeah.
3:45 p.m. Eastern time. It was a quick
Yeah.
game because when we didn't take the ball away, the Rams scored in like 6 plays. Like they're
Yeah.
very explosive. You got to do the opposite of that in terms of the explosive stuff, but also making it a short game by running the ball, have a running clock, all the stuff you're talking about. That's the way the Panthers can get this done. And I don't want to say that, oh no, we can't win this. There's no way. Because we beat the 1 seed Packers in Lambeau. We beat the 1 seed Rams here in Charlotte. Like this is a team that can beat any team in the league right now. And I think that if you do all the stuff we've been mentioning, limit possessions, be secure with the ball, because we've mentioned their defense. We haven't talked about how good their front is and how good the DBs are working in tandem in the Mike McDonald defense at limiting explosives, taking the ball away, being opportunistic. You don't turn the ball over, and then on offense keep the clock running and then score on your possession. At least you need field goals on at least every possession or almost every possession. That's the recipe to success. I think the Panthers can get it done, and we just exercised one ghost of Christmas past, if you or Panthers past, if you will, with the first Baker Mayfield meeting. Now I guess we got to deal with the present of Sam Darnold this week, and then the future of next week with Baker. But you got to focus on the present now and get it done.
Yeah, and that is the goal. Is you got to take care of business on Sunday, and I think this is a good segue in the perfect takes. You hit yours. T Mac, I think, extends his offensive rookie of the year consideration, completely outperforming Emeka Egbuka. Egbuka didn't even have a catch until like the second half, and at that point, T Mac had racked up multiple catches, touchdown score. Um, I did not hit on mine. I said both teams would score over 25. Both hit the 20 mark, but they kind of both fizzled out in the fourth quarter. That was the one thing I was like looking. I was like, okay, I think we were about like 8 to 10 minutes in the fourth, and I'm like, okay, both could like technically score a touchdown, and then it's like whoever gets the ball last, kick a field goal. Didn't end up panning out that way. The defense is tightened up, and Bryce Young was able to leave a game winning field goal drive. I think this week when we look against the Seattle Seahawks, I think the big thing is and it goes back to like the Packers game and even the Rams game. Both of those games I saw as blowouts. And so the reason why is the talent disparity seemed really off. It didn't seem like you could stay in the game. And I don't think the talent disparity is all that. I think the Seahawks are the team they are largely because of coaching. This is a team that was not viewed very highly, at least on the offensive side of the ball, going into this season. So I think from a talent standpoint, you can match up with this group really well. You just can't make mistakes, and you got to stick to your game plan. So I think when you look at the Seahawks and the Panthers and their spread right now for Week 17, you're looking at something that's like a little over a touchdown at like 7.5 points. I think this is no more than a 7 point game. I would take the under as it is currently, or not the under, the Panthers cover. I don't know what the point total is for the two, but the spread itself, I would take Carolina at 7.5. I think this is a game that they're going to be in a position to win. Whether or not they pull it off, I'm not going to say. I do think the Seahawks are the better team, but I think we keep this within a one possession game. And I think that's what matters when you come away from this week is like, hey, we were able to hang with the best every single time the bell called this year. And that is something moving forward you can hang your hat on.
I like that. The way the season has gone since our was it 3 game win streak earlier in the year, it's been quite literally every week has been loss, win, loss. You see, and we won last week. So if the pattern stayed as it has been, we would lose this one and then hopefully win next week in Tampa, which would clinch the division
We need
if it
we
works
need
out that
the
way.
the clock to reset going into the playoffs. Like that's its
Yeah.
own creature
So
because otherwise it's a first round exit.
I agree. What we need to do is win both of the remaining games. That would just solve everything. But you're right. This is our last home game. If you make the playoffs, you're guaranteed a home game as the division winner because we can't make the wild card. I think every wild card team at this point has surpassed the amount of wins we can get. I think only the Packers are the
The
team.
Lions technically
Well,
can, right?
I'm talking about the teams that are in right
Like currently
now.
slotted
Yeah,
in, yeah.
the Packers would be the only one, but they have a tie, so it's kind of iffy. I I th- I hope we win the next couple of games. That way, we can get into the season rolling. I'm gonna steal your take from last week because I just spent 15 minutes, probably more, talking about how we need to limit the time of possession. We need to limit the actual possessions. But sometimes what we say on this podcast, what we say just in general, the opposite happens. You brought up the reverse Kramer like a month ago on how everything is the opposite of what we say and how we're gonna want to do this, but it seems like coming off of a win the Panthers kind of do the opposite of what they did to get that win, or at least during this little stretch here. So I think both teams will score 25 or more, despite us wanting it to be like a 20-17 game or however we envision it. I think it's going to end up being a 30-27. Whoever gets to 30 first, whoever gets to 28 first is going to win. But both teams will score 25 or more in this one.
Knowing my luck, it'll be like 28-27 down the stretch, and then it's like the Seahawks will probably score a touchdown, go up, and then it'll be like some fluke thing happens on special teams or on offense, and they'll score like
Yeah.
a defensive touchdown and win by 2 scores, even though it was a really close contest all day. So that's probably my luck going into this Sunday. But I like that. I like that you're leaning into more the Rams approach. I'm a little skeptical about our offense being that good. I can definitely see the Seahawks putting up that many points. They've done it in a hurry. They've done it a lot this year. That's something the Panthers, I think, are just on and off about. So if we're able to turn it on, I'm here for it.
My final key to this game, I mentioned it in when we were talking about the Buccaneers game. You got to cover better on kickoffs and punts, particularly on kickoffs. We've been getting gashed all year, and they have probably the best returner in the game right now on that side of the ball with Rashid Shaheed. So you got to cover the kickoffs. That's the one phase that I wasn't super pleased with in this past game. But if you can cover correctly, hell, just boot it into the end zone on kickoffs. You don't even have to try the dirty kick or anything. Just make them start like behind the 40. I think that's how we play our game, and that's how we get it done. Hopefully, the pattern breaks. We get the win here, and we come back. It'll be right before New Year's and talk about how the Panthers have a guaranteed positive record for the first time in what would it be 8 years to this point, which huge step if we're able to accomplish that. But until then, you can find us on our socials, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And until next week, go Panthers, keep pounding. And I don't know what the Dolphins slogan is, but fins up or whatever it is, fins up, go Dolphins. And let's hope everything turns out the way we want. But keep pounding.